Pregnant wife found mistress, hiding at Millionaire home. She kicked them out and took the keys. Have you ever peered into the heart of betrayal so shocking it felt like your own world was crumbling? Imagine being 9 months pregnant and discovering someone else, your husband's mistress, lurking in the shadows of your very own home. The heartbreak, the fury, the need for retribution. This is the story of Selena Harrison, who found her peaceful life shattered by her husband, Anthony's deceit. But when she uncovered his lover hiding under her roof, Selena made a life-altering decision that would ripple through her future and theirs. Stay tuned, because karma doesn't wait, and the twists in this real-life drama will take your breath away. Selena Harrison never thought she would someday occupy the role of a pregnant wife worried about her husband's fidelity. She grew up in a small, close-knit community in Glendale, where everyone knew everyone else's secrets, yet ironically seldom confronted them openly. From a young age, Selena had learned to value honesty. She was raised by her grandparents, Raymond and Bernice Carter, who instilled in her the belief that family meant everything. The Carters were the type to host potlucks for the entire neighborhood. Their house on Spruce Street was legendary for its warm atmosphere and welcoming spirit. That was the environment Selena carried with her into adulthood. Meeting Anthony Harrison felt like the culmination of every romantic dream Selena had ever cherished. Anthony had been her high school crush, an intelligent, ambitious boy with an infectious grin. He was 2 grades ahead of Selena and left Glendale to attend a prestigious university in the city. Even when he moved away, Selena's heart remained tethered to his memory. So when he returned to town, newly hired as a financial consultant for a local firm, it seemed like destiny. People in Glendale whispered that Anthony had changed, that big city life had polished him into someone more refined, but also more guarded. Yet Selena, the small-town girl with unwavering faith in people's goodness, was sure that deep down he was the same kind-hearted soul she remembered. As soon as they began dating, it felt like the world made sense. They laughed at the same silly jokes, shared Sunday dinners with Selena's grandparents, and planned for a future bright with possibilities. Even their disagreements, few as they were, usually ended in a gentle tease or a warm hug. After a year of dating, Anthony proposed in front of a beautiful oak tree in Glendale Park, kneeling in the grass to present her a simple but elegant ring. Selena said yes, through tears of joy. Their wedding day, held in the backyard of her grandparents' house, was the talk of the town for months. Everyone praised the pair as the golden couple destined to shine together, yet they never imagined how tarnished that sheen could become. Shortly after the wedding, they moved into a 2-story brick house on Elmwood Avenue, a home that symbolized Anthony's promise of stability. With sturdy walls, a quaint backyard garden, and ample rooms for a future family, it felt perfect. Selena decorated the living room with paintings of blooming wildflowers and embroidered pillows, details that spoke to her gentle spirit. Little did she know, those same walls would bear silent witness to a betrayal that would shake her to the core. For within this home, her haven, lurked secrets that would soon unravel her entire sense of security. If she had known what heartbreak lay ahead, perhaps she would have begged Anthony to stay in a modest apartment until the baby arrived. But fate has a way of unfolding at its own pace, no matter how hard we try to control it. Selena had always wanted to be a mother. She'd spent her teenage years babysitting cousins and neighbors' kids, proudly boasting that her babysitting gigs were a window into her future. So when she and Anthony discovered she was pregnant, Selina's happiness soared beyond words. She painted an extra room in the house, a calming shade of pale yellow, envisioning a space filled with stuffed animals, soft blankets and lullabies. But from the moment Selina announced her pregnancy, subtle changes crept into Anthony's behavior. He started coming home later from work, citing client dinners and unexpected deadlines. He grew quieter during their usual evening routines. Their dinners, once accompanied by laughter and playful banter, turned into hushed affairs as Anthony picked at his food distractedly. Selina noticed the shift. She tried to communicate her concerns, but every question was met with a curt, "I'm just tired, honey, or work is really demanding these days." At first, Selina chalked it up to the normal stress of anticipating a baby. She convinced herself that Anthony was simply trying to secure their financial future. After all, the cost of raising a child was no small thing, and she believed he carried the weight of being the family provider. Yet deep inside, a whisper of doubt nagged at her. Something just felt off when she was about 3 months pregnant. A minor incident heightened her suspicions. One night, Anthony left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. It began buzzing repeatedly with text notifications. Selina couldn't help but glance at the screen, seeing multiple messages from a contact labeled MC. The previews contained words like "miss you" and "when can I see you" before she could read more. Anthony rushed to grab the phone, apologizing that it was a colleague from work who often confused boundaries between professional and personal communication. Selina wanted to believe him, so she buried her concerns. But as her pregnancy progressed, Anthony's odd behavior only intensified. He never missed a single prenatal appointment, but he was emotionally absent. Instead of sharing the joy of feeling their baby kick, he would stare into the distance. Instead of comfort and affection, he offered absent-minded nods. Then came the phone calls he received at odd hours. The moment the phone rang, he rushed into another room to answer. Sometimes he even stepped outside on the porch or into the car. Every time Selina tried to ask him who had called, he brushed it off as an urgent work issue. She began to feel a growing gulf between them, one that widened daily. A part of her still clung to hope, waiting for Anthony's tender side to resurface. She told herself that once the baby arrived, everything would fall back into place. He would remember the sweet confessions they used to share the weekend, getaways, the nights they spent dreaming about a family. She thought love could conquer all, including doubts. In truth, Selina's unwavering trust was about to be shattered, and it would happen in the most devastating way imaginable within her own home, the place she considered her safe harbor. 7 months into her pregnancy, Selina found herself struggling with insomnia. Her growing belly made it difficult to get comfortable, and as she lay awake at night, her mind reeled with worries about Anthony. She began noticing more troubling signs that suggested something sinister lurked beneath the veneer of their marriage. One evening, while Anthony was at another of his supposed work dinners, Selina decided to tidy up the house. She came across a receipt tucked into one of his jacket pockets. It was from a swanky hotel downtown, the Renaissance, Glendale. The date on the slip coincided with a night he claimed he'd been working late. The cost included a room service meal for 2. With trembling fingers, Selina held the evidence that her beloved husband might be having an affair. But the next morning, when confronted, Anthony brushed off the receipt as a business expense for entertaining out-of-town clients. Selina's heart twisted in uncertainty. Yet again. A couple of weeks later, Selina was organizing the soon-to-be nursery. While moving furniture around, she spotted a gold earring glinting on the rug. She picked it up, thinking it might be her grandmother's, but she had never owned a pair like this, nor did any of her friends that she could recall. At first, she thought perhaps she found an old item from the previous homeowners, but the earring looked brand new. It struck her as strange, yet she tried to rationalize it. Maybe a friend dropped it during her baby shower. A small voice in her head, though refused to be silenced. Selina also noticed a lingering floral scent in their bedroom sometimes. It was not her perfume. She wore a light lavender fragrance that Anthony had gifted her on their anniversary. The sweet, musky aroma belonged to someone else, and it made her uneasy. She washed the bedsheets every other day, convinced something was wrong. Anthony, whenever she mentioned it, feigned ignorance or teased her about pregnancy, hormones making her senses hyperactive. The final straw came from an unexpected source, Margaret Caldwell, an old friend from high school, who had always been forthright to the point of bluntness. During a conversation over coffee, Margaret hinted she'd seen Anthony in the downtown area one afternoon, lingering around a cafe's outdoor patio with a petite brunette. They looked close, Margaret had said, hesitantly. She was clearly worried about upsetting Selina. Selina's heart pounded. She tried to hide her alarm behind a forced smile. Inside, though, her mind churned with suspicion and hurt. Could it be that her loving, devoted husband was deeply enmeshed in an affair? And who was the other woman without definitive proof? Selina felt her entire world perched on the edge. On one hand, she wanted to preserve the marriage she cherished. On the other, she could not ignore the mounting signs. Every new clue felt like an arrow of betrayal. She wondered what more evidence she needed to confront the frightening truth. All the while, her unborn baby rested beneath her heart, and the knowledge that a vulnerable new life was about to enter this turmoil weighed heavily on her soul. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when Selina's growing suspicions turned into undeniable reality. At 36 weeks pregnant, Selina was on maternity leave, trying her best to relax before the baby's arrival. Anthony had left early that morning, mentioning something about a crucial meeting. Usually she might have taken his word for it, but a nagging intuition pressed her to remain vigilant. Selina decided to do some light grocery shopping around noon. The slight breeze and falling leaves provided a momentary sense of normalcy, even as her heart drummed with anxiety. She drove to the local supermarket, humming a lullaby she planned to sing to her baby someday. While searching the aisles for fresh produce, her phone buzzed. A random friend from her prenatal yoga class texted about a last-minute meetup for tea, and Selina mulled over going, but the strange weight in her chest told her to go home instead. Arriving home, she parked in the driveway and noticed something amiss. Anthony's car was parked around the corner, almost hidden from view. It was a suspicious detail if he was indeed at a meeting. Why was his car practically concealed near their house? Her pulse quickened. Trying to stay calm, Selina approached the front door and inserted her key quietly. The house felt unsettlingly silent. She set her grocery bags on the kitchen counter, every step echoing in her ears. A cautious glance showed no sign of Anthony in the living room or the study. Yet the sensation of another presence lingered, sending chills down her spine. She left the groceries half unpacked and made her way upstairs. Halfway up, she froze at the sound of muffled footsteps on the second floor. Her breath hitched her heart, pounding like a drum. She continued carefully, the steps feeling like a climb toward her worst nightmare. The hallway leading to the master bedroom was dim in the afternoon light. Then she heard it, a faint laugh, distinctly feminine, drifting from behind the closed bedroom door. Selina's stomach twisted. She felt fear, heartbreak, and fury swirl inside her simultaneously. Gathering her courage, she pushed open the door to find Anthony standing there in shock. His eyes darted between Selina and the half-dressed woman who was hastily trying to cover herself with a bedsheet. It was a moment that seemed to stretch on forever. A pregnant wife, her traitorous husband, and an interloper caught red-handed in a space that had always belonged to Selina and Anthony alone. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then the other woman, a young brunette, stranger with trembling lips, broke the silence. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but the apology fell on deaf ears. Selina's gaze burned with tears. She refused to let fall. Anger surged through her, granting her a newfound strength she didn't know she possessed. This was the moment she realized everything she'd suspected was true and her entire world was crumbling. She couldn't run. She wouldn't hide. She had to face it head-on. This was the day of reckoning for Anthony, his mistress, and the sacred vows they had shattered to pieces. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Selina stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, her breath catching painfully in her chest. Before her, Anthony and the brunette woman scrambled awkwardly, guilt and panic written across their faces, the bedsheets tangled around the mistress, failing to shield her shame. Anthony's bare chest rose and fell with shallow, desperate breaths. In that suspended moment, all three of them were statues caught in a scene so surreal. Selina almost believed she was dreaming a nightmare she'd soon wake from. But there was no waking up. This was reality, brutal and cold. The baby stirred inside her, as if sensing the volcano of emotions erupting within his mother. Selina's hand instinctively found her belly, offering silent reassurance, even as her world collapsed. When she finally found her voice, it cracked the heavy silence like a whip. "What in God's name is this?" she demanded, her tone a razor's edge. Anthony opened his mouth, but only a stammer escaped. The brunette clutched the bedsheet tighter around her, shrinking under Selina's burning gaze. "I'm sorry." The woman whispered, her voice quivering. The apology was meaningless, a flimsy band-aid slapped over a gaping wound. Selina barely registered it. Her fury locked onto Anthony, the man she had trusted above all else, now revealed as nothing more than a traitor. Anthony, still fumbling for words, tried to move toward her hands, raised in a pitiful gesture of surrender. "Selina, this isn't what it looks like," he blurted, desperation dripping from every syllable. Selina let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Not what it looks like," she echoed, her voice low and trembling. "I found you half naked in our bed, with another woman in our home. Tell me, Anthony, what exactly am I supposed to think this is?" The brunette edged off the bed, fumbling for the pile of discarded clothing. She dared not meet Selina's eyes. Every move she made was frantic and clumsy, as though she could somehow erase herself from this disaster. If she dressed quickly enough, Selina watched her coldly. As the woman reached for Selina's favorite silk robe, a maternity gift from her grandmother. Something inside, Selina snapped. "Don't you touch that!" Selina hissed each word, cutting the air like shards of glass. "You have no right to anything in this house." The woman's hand froze mid-air, then quickly dropped. She gathered her own clothes instead, clutching them to her chest as she hurried toward the hallway bathroom to change her footsteps, rapid and unsteady. Anthony, sensing the narrowing window to salvage anything, tried again. "Please, Selina, just let me explain. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. We can fix this." Selina turned her gaze on him, the pain in her eyes outmatched only by the disgust. "Fix this," she repeated, voice thick with incredulity. "You've shattered everything. There's no fixing betrayal." Her hands curled into fists at her sides, nails digging into her palms, every memory, every whispered, "I love you." Every promise of forever flashed through her mind and burned away into ashes. "You made your choice," she said coldly, "and now you're going to live with it." Anthony reached out again, but Selina jerked away the recoil so sharp it made him flinch. The betrayal lay between them, like a chasm that could never be crossed. The mistress, now dressed, emerged from the bathroom, her face pale and tear-streaked. She hesitated in the hallway, as if unsure whether she should leave or apologize again. Selina didn't even spare her a glance. "Get out!" Selina said, her voice steely. The woman needed no further urging. She fled down the stairs, her steps echoing hollowly in the house that had once been filled with love. Anthony lingered a moment longer, seemingly rooted to the spot, torn between chasing after his mistress or falling to his knees before his wife. Selina made the decision for him. "Take your things," she commanded, her voice deadly calm. "And get out." He hesitated, but the look in Selina's eyes, one that spoke of finality and a strength he hadn't anticipated, told him there was no room for negotiation. Tears blurred Selina's vision as she turned away, her back straight, her heart breaking with every step. She descended the stairs, each footfall a drumbeat of grief and resolve. This was no longer their home. This was no longer their story. It was hers now, hers, and the precious life she carried within her. As the front door slammed shut behind Anthony, Selina leaned heavily against the banister, her hand pressed protectively against her belly. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her unborn child, her voice trembling but full of conviction. No matter the heartbreak, no matter the betrayal, she would rebuild from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and unbreakable. Selina didn't waste a second after witnessing the betrayal that shattered her heart. Adrenaline surged through her veins, lending her strength she scarcely knew she possessed. Without looking back at Anthony or the trembling woman who had invaded her sanctuary, Selina marched down the hallway, her bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. Her mind raced, but her actions were swift and deliberate. There was no space left for hesitation. Not anymore. Storming into the spare bedroom, a room once meant to become the nursery for their unborn child, Selina yanked open the closet doors with a force that rattled the hinges. Inside, she grabbed the first overnight duffel bag she could find, a navy blue one Anthony sometimes used for gym trips or short business getaways. Her hands, though trembling, moved with purpose as she stuffed clothes into the bag. Shirts, pants, socks, shoes. She didn't care what she packed. All that mattered was getting him out. Footsteps approached cautiously behind her. Anthony's voice, laced with panic, cracked the tense air. "Selina, please," he rasped. "I know I messed up. Just give me a chance to explain." At that, Selina spun around so quickly that Anthony flinched. The fire in her eyes was enough to pin him where he stood. "Explain!" She hissed, her voice, low and dangerous. "Explain how you brought another woman into my house, into the home where we planned our child's future." Anthony took a tentative step forward, his hands outstretched, as if he could somehow reach her through sheer desperation. "It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking." "You weren't thinking," Selina snapped, throwing a handful of crumpled shirts into the duffel with vicious energy. "You were thinking just fine when you lied to my face, when you snuck around like a coward." The bathroom door creaked open then, and the brunette mistress emerged, now fully clothed, clutching her purse tightly against her body. Her face was flushed crimson with shame. Selina's gaze turned icy as it locked onto the young woman. "You go," Selina barked, her voice sharper than a whip. "Get out now!" The mistress stammered an apology. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know, I swear." But Selina cut her off with a curt wave of her hand, dismissing her like a speck of dust. "Save your apologies for someone who cares," Selina growled. "You can both rot together for all I care." The young woman scurried down the stairs, her heels clicking like a guilty metronome. Anthony made a move to follow, but Selina blocked his path. In one fluid motion, she reached into his jeans pocket and pulled out the house keys he always carried. She held them up for a moment, letting the symbolism sink in, then clenched them tightly in her fist. "You don't deserve these anymore," she said coldly. Anthony's face crumpled. "Where am I supposed to go?" he whispered, his voice breaking. For the first time since Selina had known him, he looked utterly defeated, a hollow shell of the man she had once adored. Selina's laugh was dry, humorless. "Go to the fancy hotel you wasted our money on. Go to her place. Sleep in your damn car for all I care. Just get out of my house." She thrust the packed duffel bag into his chest with enough force that he staggered back a step. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall, refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her broken. "Selina, please," Anthony begged one last time, but she was already walking away, her shoulders stiff with anger and pain. She descended the stairs without a backward glance, her steps slow but resolute. From the foyer, she heard Anthony's heavy tread, following a few moments later. Then came the sound of the front door opening, the sharp, hollow slam as it closed behind him. Selina stood there in the middle of the living room, surrounded by silence and echoes of memories that now felt tainted. For a moment, she simply breathed in and out, willing herself to stay upright. She placed a hand protectively over her pregnant belly, feeling a gentle kick in response, a silent reassurance from the life growing inside her. Tears blurred her vision at last, but they were no longer tears of helplessness. They were tears of fierce resolve. She had lost a husband. Yes, she had lost illusions, trust and dreams, but she had not lost herself. Clutching the house keys tightly in her hand, Selina turned and slowly began picking up the groceries she had dropped earlier that afternoon. Life, messy and beautiful and painful, would go on, and she would face it, standing tall, not crumbling at the feet of betrayal. In the hours after she kicked Anthony out, Selina was overtaken by a wave of dizziness and exhaustion, so profound that she collapsed on the couch. She heard her own breathing shallow, raspy, mixed with hiccuping sobs. Images of what she had just witnessed replayed in her mind like a relentless film reel. She couldn't escape the memory of that woman's apologetic eyes, Anthony's naked betrayal, and the humiliating sensation of her life shattering before her. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, rattling her out of her daze. She saw several missed calls and text messages from Anthony. She refused to pick up. She was done with his excuses, done with his pleas. Closing her eyes, she let out a trembling breath, trying to gather herself. Then she felt her baby kick gently, an angelic reminder that she wasn't truly alone. That little life needed her to be strong. Selina decided to call her grandmother Bernice, but paused halfway through dialing. For so long she had hidden the cracks in her marriage from her grandparents, not wanting to worry them. She pictured her grandmother's kind, yet anxious face if she discovered the truth. Eventually, Selina closed her eyes and pressed call. If there was ever a time to lean on the people who loved her unconditionally, it was now. Bernice answered almost immediately. "Hello, dear," she greeted softly. "How's my granddaughter doing today? Everything okay with the baby?" Her tone was cheerful, but Selina couldn't keep the dam of emotion from overflowing. She sobbed into the phone, unable to articulate what had happened. Eventually, in broken fragments, she confessed the day's horrifying events. "Oh, my sweet girl." "Bernice," whispered voice, quivering with empathy. "I'm so sorry, I'll be right there." Selina felt relief, and yet also shame. She hated that she was bringing her grandparents into the mire of her broken marriage. 40 minutes later, Bernice arrived, wearing her familiar flowery dress and carrying a Tupperware container of homemade stew. The sight of her grandmother's gentle face brought fresh tears to Selina's eyes. Bernice pulled her into an embrace, offering what words of comfort she could. "We'll figure this out together," she said, rubbing Selina's back softly. They moved to the kitchen, and Selina sipped the stew from a small bowl, while Bernice massaged her tense shoulders. Slowly, Selina shared every detail: Anthony's suspicious behavior, the earring she'd found, Margaret Caldwell's warning, and finally that fateful moment of discovery. Her grandmother listened intently, her brow creased with anger and sorrow. She didn't speak ill of Anthony, but neither did she defend him. "I had hoped he'd be better than this," Bernice admitted softly, wiping tears from Selina's cheeks. "I know you love him, but trust has been broken, dear. That's not easily repaired. Right now, focus on you and that little one." Holding Bernice's hand, Selina felt both heartbreak and a faint glimmer of resolve. She had always been strong in spirit. Now she realized she had no choice but to be strong in action. And as she stroked her belly, she whispered a silent vow she and her child would survive this, no matter how dark the days ahead seemed. Out on the curb, Anthony Harrison clutched his duffel bag and shivered under the evening breeze. The mistress, whose name was Danielle Reed, stood a few feet away, arms folded across her chest. She had expected a passionate afternoon, not a humiliating expulsion. Now they were both fugitives from the wrath of a woman who had every right to be furious. Danielle avoided Anthony's gaze. Guilt and embarrassment waged a war across her features. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. She couldn't ignore the pang in her heart, knowing she'd been complicit in an affair with a married man, a father-to-be, no less. Anthony exhaled shakily. Everything had unraveled so fast. One moment he was caught in the intoxication of Danielle's affection, the rush of something new and forbidden. The next he faced the very real consequences of betraying the woman who had always stood by him. "I guess we'll go to a hotel," he stammered. "I can't go home." Danielle noticed the heartbreak in his eyes, but she also felt her own wave of panic. This was not the glamorous affair she had fantasized about. The moment Selina confronted them, Danielle realized the gravity of what she'd done. Yet part of her loved Anthony, or thought she did, and believed his claims that he felt trapped in a loveless marriage. Standing there, she wasn't so sure anymore. They booked a small room at a budget motel on the outskirts of Glendale. The neon vacancy sign flickered ominously, mirroring the state of their relationship. Inside the cramped space, the walls painted a dull beige. Anthony sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. Danielle lingered by the window, staring at the parking lot. "I'm sorry," she finally offered, turning around to face him. "I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to be the reason your marriage fell apart." Anthony looked up, eyes bloodshot. "I did this. Not you. I let this happen. Now I've destroyed everything he pictured. Selina, her teary, outraged face, the child growing within her, the ring on her finger that he once placed there with trembling hope. Regret tore at him, an ache that pulsed with each breath. "What are you going to do?" Danielle asked. The question hung in the stale motel air. Anthony didn't know. The truth was, He had no plan. His finances were tied up with Selina's. The baby was due any day now. His in-laws were supportive of Selina, and the entire town would soon know he was the husband who betrayed his pregnant wife. He felt cornered, ashamed. Danielle placed a tentative hand on his shoulder, and for a moment he leaned into her touch. Yet the sensation was hollow, overshadowed by guilt. He couldn't shake the image of Selina's face when she discovered them. That memory threatened to consume him. Some part of Anthony wanted to run after Selina and beg forgiveness. Another part, the selfish part, resented the idea of giving up the electric thrill Danielle once offered. But standing amid the wreckage of his choices, he also realized that any path he chose led into a storm of repercussions. Little did he know, karma's swirling winds had only just begun to gather force. Selina spent the next few days in an emotional storm. She refused all of Anthony's calls. Bernice stayed over to help around the house, and occasionally Selina's grandfather, Raymond, would drop by to fix a squeaky door or try to lift her spirits with silly dad jokes. Despite their loving presence, Selina felt hollow nights were the worst. She would jolt awake from nightmares, her pulse pounding, baby stirring in her womb as though sensing her distress. Meanwhile, word travelled fast in Glendale. Margaret Caldwell, well-intentioned but notoriously loose-lipped, told a friend who told another friend, and soon half the town knew that Anthony Harrison had been caught cheating on his pregnant wife. Faces turned away from Anthony in the supermarket, acquaintances refused to greet him, and potential clients suddenly cancelled appointments at his firm. Gossip was Glendale's lifeblood, and this story was a feast for the rumor mill. Anthony, finding it impossible to concentrate at work, decided to take a leave of absence. Not that it mattered. His reputation was already tarnished. Desperate for solace, he turned to Danielle. But their relationship, once built on secrecy, and stolen moments faltered under the weight of public scrutiny and guilt. Danielle felt like an outcast. She'd never anticipated the scornful looks in coffee shops or the hateful whispers behind her back. Being labelled the homewrecker wore on her psyche. Tension festered between her and Anthony, transforming their motel sanctuary into a battleground of blame and regret. Karma took a more tangible shape when Anthony discovered his bank account was nearly frozen because the house was in Selina's name, and she had insisted on separate checking after too many suspicious work expenses. He was left scrambling for funds. He tried to withdraw money, only to find that Selina had cancelled their joint credit card. Angered and humiliated, Anthony called her, "You're making it impossible for me to survive," he accused, voice strained. Selina's own voice trembled. "You made it impossible for me to trust you," she retorted, hanging up. The pit of her stomach churned with a mixture of pity and fury, but she wasn't about to relent. Let him feel the weight of his choices, as if those financial woes weren't enough. Anthony's car broke down on a quiet stretch of highway one evening. He'd neglected its maintenance in the last few months. With no money to spare, he found himself hitchhiking to the nearest gas station, only to be recognized by a passing neighbor. The neighbor stared at him with thinly veiled disgust before driving on. Eventually, a stranger picked him up. The humiliation was scorching. Danielle, seeing Anthony's meltdown, began to question everything she had thought. He was a man trapped in a loveless marriage. But maybe he was just a man incapable of loyalty. Maybe this was who he really was. They argued more frequently, Danielle demanding to know if he was going to make things official with her, Anthony vacillating about whether he should try to go back to Selina. Their motel room started to feel like a prison, a far cry from the gilded fantasy that once fueled their affair. In Glendale, eyes watched, people whispered. And in the midst of it all, Selina sat in her rocking chair in the soon-to-be nursery, a swirl of heartbreak, anger, and an odd, unfamiliar sense of liberation. She was shattered, yes, but also determined. If this was karma's beginning, Selina believed it wouldn't spare anyone who earned its wrath. The days marched on, and despite the heartbreak, Selina discovered a new inner strength blossoming beneath her pain. Each morning she woke up with a purpose to take care of herself and the baby. Bernice and Raymond would drop by with home-cooked meals and moral support, but they also gave her space, knowing she needed to heal on her own terms. Selina's prenatal checkups became moments of solace. Her doctor, Melissa Grant, was a warm, empathetic woman who delivered countless babies in Glendale. Dr. Grant noticed the tension in Selina's posture and the sadness shadowing her eyes. "Stress isn't good for you. Right now," she gently reminded, "focus on the well-being of your baby and yourself." Taking that advice to heart, Selina began exploring self-care in small ways. She read books on motherhood, not the ones that only showed perfect families, but those that tackled single parenthood head-on. She attended a local support group for expectant mothers, forging new friendships with women who shared her anxiety about the future. Some were single, others had loving spouses. But in each session, Selina found a comforting reminder that she wasn't alone in her fears or her hopes. She also allowed herself moments of sorrow, long cathartic cries in the shower where the running water disguised her tears. This was an essential release, purging her pent-up pain, but she refused to let that sorrow define her entire day. One afternoon, Selina revisited the idea of returning to work after the baby was born. She hadn't planned on it initially. She believed Anthony's salary would support them. Now everything had changed. She contacted her old boss, Heather Collins, at Glendale's local design studio, where she once worked as a junior graphic designer. Heather welcomed her with open arms, offering a flexible schedule once Selina was ready. The gesture made Selina's eyes fill with tears of gratitude. It felt like a door opening, a reassurance that she could stand on her own 2 feet, even without Anthony. The baby's nursery, the one Selina had planned to complete with Anthony, remained half-finished. At first, she couldn't bear to look at the empty crib or the unopened boxes of baby supplies stacked in the corner. But as the days turned into weeks, she mustered the courage to continue preparing. She painted a mural of soft clouds on the wall, each brushstroke a silent affirmation that she could create beauty amidst chaos. Bernice smiling through her own heartbreak, for Selina helped hang new curtains and arrange stuffed animals on shelves. The space transformed into a calming sanctuary. Through every small victory, a part of Selina healed. She realized that while Anthony's betrayal had shattered her romantic illusions, it had also lit a spark of independence within her. Yes, she was pregnant, scared and uncertain of what lay ahead, but she was also resilient. And now more than ever, she believed she could be the loving, protective mother her child deserved. One who would fight fiercely for their peace and happiness regardless of any man's failures. As the scandal of Anthony's betrayal unraveled in Glendale, the town's judgment came swift and merciless. Whispers spread faster than wildfire, igniting every street corner, every diner booth, every church pew. Once the golden boy of the town, Anthony Harrison, now walked through shadows of disdain and thinly veiled disgust. Faces he had known since childhood turned away from him in supermarkets. Former friends offered cold nods or outright ignored him, pretending not to see his shame. Anthony tried to keep a low profile, ducking into small shops, avoiding familiar streets. but the gossip clung to him like a second skin. He couldn't escape the piercing eyes or the murmured conversations that died when he entered a room. Worse yet, word of his infidelity reached his workplace. Clients began withdrawing accounts, citing personal discomfort or reputation concerns. His boss, a stern man named Richard Evans, summoned Anthony into his office one dreary Monday morning. "Anthony, Dr. Dold." Richard began, his voice strained with a forced professionalism. "We appreciate your work here, but circumstances have made it difficult for clients to trust us as a firm. We've decided it's best you take an indefinite leave." The implication was clear. Anthony was being quietly exiled, his career crumbling alongside his personal life. Meanwhile, Anthony's relationship with Danielle, the woman he had risked everything for, began to corrode under the weight of reality. The passionate secrecy that once bound them now suffocated them. They rented a dingy motel room on the edge of town, the only place Danielle could afford on her meager salary, and it quickly became a prison. The stale air was thick with resentment, the silence punctuated only by bitter arguments. "You said you loved me," Danielle snapped one night, her voice cracking as she packed a small suitcase. "But you're still calling her. You're still trying to get her back." Anthony had no defense. He slumped on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, unable to articulate the whirlwind of guilt, regret, and longing that hollowed him out. In truth, he missed Selina's steady presence, the home they'd built together, the family that had been within reach, now lost, perhaps forever. Danielle slammed her suitcase shut, her cheeks streaked with angry tears. "I'm done," she spat. "I won't be your second choice." Without another word, she stormed out of the motel room, leaving Anthony alone in the dim, flickering light. His fall from grace only deepened. His bank account, once comfortable, now teetered dangerously close to empty. Selina, having frozen their joint credit cards and secured her own finances, left Anthony scrambling for cash. Attempts to withdraw funds met with rejection notices. Bitter and desperate, he tried calling Selina to plead for access to the house or some financial reprieve. Selina answered with a cold, clipped voice. "You made your choices, Anthony, live with them." One evening, Anthony's battered car gave up on him entirely, stalling on the side of a desolate road just outside town. He tried waving down passing vehicles, but most drivers accelerated away, unwilling to associate with the town's latest pariah. Hours later, a stranger reluctantly offered him a ride to the nearest gas station, treating him with wary detachment. Seeking comfort, Anthony drove to his parents' home in a neighboring town, clinging to a desperate hope that family could offer some respite. But even there, sanctuary eluded him. His mother opened the door with a tight-lipped frown. His father, lurking behind her arms crossed. "Selina called us," his mother said, her voice quivering with a mixture of fury and sadness. "We know what you've done." Anthony tried to explain, tried to spin his actions into something forgivable, but his words sounded hollow, even to his own ears. His mother shook her head, tears glistening in her stern eyes. "You betrayed her. You betrayed our grandchild," she whispered. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you." They allowed him to sleep on the couch that night, but the silence was punishing, colder than any rebuke. Karma, it seemed, was not finished exacting its toll. Late one night, Selina, still grappling with the heartbreak, felt a sharp, alarming pain in her abdomen. Dizzy and terrified, she called out for her grandmother. Bernice rushed her to Glendale General Hospital, panic shadowing every mile. Doctors quickly diagnosed early signs of preeclampsia, dangerously high blood pressure, likely brought on by extreme emotional stress. Selina's condition was serious but stable, and she was admitted for overnight monitoring. Bernice, despite her anger toward Anthony, knew he deserved to be informed. Reluctantly, she left a voicemail. Anthony arrived, breathless and disheveled, only to be met by Bernice's steely glare and Dr. Grant's cold professionalism. He wasn't allowed to disturb Selina. The staff was clear that Selina needed peace, not more turmoil. From the hallway, Anthony caught glimpses of Selina through the glass door. She lay pale and exhausted in the hospital bed, protective hands resting over her swollen belly. Guilt gnawed at him more savagely than ever before. This was the true cost of his betrayal. Not just a lost marriage, but jeopardizing the very lives he was supposed to protect. He waited for hours, desperate for any news, but Selina never summoned him inside. As dawn broke over the hospital parking lot, Anthony sat slumped in a chair, understanding fully now that some mistakes leave scars too deep to ever truly heal, and karma, relentless and impartial, had only just begun to balance the scales. Tim away at the door, insisting Selina needed peace. The night before she went into labor, Selina found herself unable to sleep. She sat in the nursery's rocking chair, the soft glow of a nightlight illuminating the mural she had painted. Thoughts swirled anger at Anthony, sadness for what they'd lost, and a deep, unyielding love for her unborn baby. In the early hours of dawn, her water broke, frantic but strangely calm. Selina alerted Bernice and Raymond, who rushed her to Glendale General Hospital. Dr. Grant and the nurses quickly prepared for delivery, mindful of Selina's earlier complications. Anthony arrived having been alerted by Bernice out of duty rather than affection. He paced in the waiting room, panic etched across his features. After hours of labor, Selina brought a beautiful baby boy into the world. She named him Carter Harrison, a tribute to the grandparents who raised her, exhausted, trembling, but flooded with relief. Selina held Carter to her chest, tears mingling with sweat. A nurse tentatively asked if Anthony could come in. Selina hesitated, but she nodded. Whatever his failings, he was the boy's father. Anthony stepped inside, face pale and eyes brimming with emotions. He's incredible, Anthony whispered, gazing down at the tiny infant in Selina's arms. Hesitant, he reached out a hand. Selina allowed him to gently touch Carter's small fingers. The baby squirmed, letting out a soft coo. Selina looked up. In her eyes, Anthony saw both an unbreakable love for their child and a fortress of pain surrounding her. "I'm glad you came," she murmured, her tone guarded. "But don't think this changes everything." He swallowed, nodding. "Why, no. And I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right." She closed her eyes, breathing in the moment. She wasn't sure if she could ever forgive him enough to rekindle their marriage. Trust once broken is fragile, but she also wanted her son to have a father, to know that he was loved by both parents. "We'll figure out some arrangement," she said at last. For Carter, those words left the door open just a crack, but a chasm remained between them. Anthony felt a rush of remorse, realizing this might be the best he could hope for a co-parenting role if Selina would allow it. Everything else was uncertain. As the days turned into weeks, Selina focused on healing and caring for Carter. True to her word, she allowed Anthony limited visits. A court order for child support was drawn up, ensuring Carter's financial security. Gossip in Glendale died down as a new scandal took center stage. Such was the town's fickle attention. Through it all, Selina remained determined to build a stable life for her son. Whether Anthony would eventually earn back a place in her life was a question only time could answer. Yet one thing was clear: karma had struck its blow. Anthony paid dearly for his betrayal, losing the love and trust of the one person who had believed in him unconditionally. Selena, though scarred, emerged stronger, and baby Carter, a tiny, miraculous beam of hope, became the reason his mother found the courage to stand tall again. In the end, life carried on, battered by betrayal, yet buoyed by the promise of new beginnings. Betrayal can take us to the darkest corners of our hearts, but it can also spark a fierce resolve to rise above the wreckage. Selena's world shattered the day she found Anthony's mistress hiding in her own home, yet through heartbreak and the birth of her baby boy Carter, she discovered a strength she never knew existed. Anthony left to face the aftermath of his betrayal, learned that karma's lessons are swift and unforgiving, especially when you wound those who've loved you most. Have you ever felt the sting of betrayal or been tested by life's harshest lessons? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If Selena's story resonates with you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of resilience, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas and inspirational tales. Your support helps us bring you the most gripping stories every week. Thank you for watching.